Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. I wanted to share with you some information on Nexus letters and what a Nexus is, talk through some examples, give you some ideas of kind of how that all works. I know there's some of you out there that have questions about it, and do you need a Nexus letter for every single thing you file? And I wanted to share with you kind of just some chatting back and forth, well, I guess chatting at you. Speaking of that, if you would like to see some dialogued type content, I do have a second channel that I started with Clay over at the Civ Div, and that channel is called Veterans Daily. Veterans Daily's a great channel for veteran information and some good back and forth dialogue. And, you know, look, we're not always going to agree. Sometimes we're going to have different viewpoints. So it really kind of gives you a nice perspective of what's going on. So check that out if you will. I really appreciate the additional support. All right, so let's just jump into this. Hit the thumbs up, all that good stuff. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you. All right, so Nexus for the VA is simply showing the VA, proving to the VA that whatever condition you are filing for manifested during your service or is a result of your service. In other words, you are establishing that link between the two, the condition and your time in service. So that is Nexus. Why do you need a Nexus letter? Well, you need a Nexus letter if you're having a very hard time really substantiating your claim as far as the Nexus is concerned, and you need some additional evidence to help support the Nexus aspect. So a Nexus letter effectively helps you to establish a nexus. So it's the doctor saying, you've all heard the words, it's at least likely as not to have manifested or occurred or is due to your time in service, right? The at least likely as not portion is the VA's minimum threshold. If you think of the VA kind of like a court process, a legal process, they don't have the same high standard of without a shadow of a doubt, right? It's not that. It's at least likely as not. So if evidence is in equipoise, equal on both sides, the VA is supposed to rule in your favor. Do they get it right all the time? No, they don't. And so that's why you have to basically go through the dispute process, right? Dispute with a higher level review, dispute with a supplemental claim with additional evidence, or push it to the Board of Veterans Appeals as a kind of a last resort. It takes longer that way. If you can get it taken care of on the first two options, you're better off with a higher level review or supplemental claim for the sake of just moving it along faster. So back to Nexus. So the ideal situation for a successful claim with the VA, the ideal situation, and this is a very small percentage, the ideal situation is you as the veteran filing your claim for X, Y, or Z were diagnosed for that condition, or you had that condition, if it was an injury, documented during your time in service. You got diagnosed with, migraines. You got diagnosed with migraines while you were in service. You got diagnosed with plantar fasciitis during service. You got diagnosed for hypertension during service. You got documented your injury to your back, your knee, your elbow, your neck, whatever, right? So if you had all of that stuff done, that would make it very easy because that's clear nexus. The dates provide the nexus. Your time in service was from here to here. Your condition was diagnosed here, and your injury was diagnosed here. Inside that window of opportunity, meaning your time in service. Now, there's always nuance, right? Welcome to the VA. You do have a 1-year presumptive window after your time of service has completed. You have a 1-year window after that for a lot of more like, I would say, disease type things, illnesses, maybe you hypertension or something like that. After you got out, if you got diagnosed 3 months after you got out, the VA is going to presume that manifested during your time in service and you just kind of caught it now. Then you have your whole list of presumptives, whether it was Gulf War, Vietnam, Agent Orange stuff, the water at Camp Lejeune, and so forth. So presumptives eliminate the need for the Nexus, which is why presumptives are so special. Because many people don't get diagnosed for things, they have a hard time proving the Nexus, but the VA concedes and says, if you served during this time period in this location and you have this condition, we're going to presume that it's due to your time in service, i.e. Agent Orange for hypertension, right? You served in Vietnam, you have hypertension. The VA just goes, yeah, you don't need to prove your Nexus. So that's helpful. But for a lot of us, we don't have stuff documented in service, and we don't have the condition listed as a presumptive condition. So now you have to file it with all of the evidence. That's where you need to establish your Nexus. You need to work to establish enough evidence for the VA to rule in your favor from the perspective of Nexus. Everybody who's filing claims with the VA should have the right type of discharge, have their time in service, right? Should be a veteran. So that part's taken care of. You should be diagnosed for a condition, ailment, injury, something. Something needs to be documented that is chronic in nature or has some sort of residual ongoing effect to you, right? The last piece is the Nexus piece. You need to prove, again, that your condition manifested during service or as a result of service. So, again, many of us don't go to the medic and get things documented. We don't go to the battalion aid station. We don't go to medical and have things documented unless it was a major injury type of a situation, typically. Now, on your exit physical health assessment, you may have had a form in there that was a self-attesting form, right? Please check all that apply. Have you now or have you ever experienced any one of these conditions? And you're checking boxes. Yes, no, not applicable. Tuberculosis, cancer, heart, diabetes, high blood pressure, heartburn, migraines, whatever. So you're checking these boxes. Maybe you said yes to some of the things that you currently have. Well, if you say yes, it's not a diagnosis, right? But you are self-attesting to experiencing issues in that realm. So in some cases, it might be you're self-attesting to symptoms of another condition, right? So like heartburn would be a condition or a symptom of GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. It might say, have you ever experienced headaches? You could say yes, well, maybe those headaches are actually migraines. So utilizing that, it helps you to have a little, wedge into your time in service to say, hey, look, I complained about it back here. I self-attested to having these conditions. That was the beginning, the onset of my condition, and it has just gotten worse ever since then. So that's kind of your next best situation, is that you've documented signs or symptoms of a condition. Now, again, that's kind of the next best case. Best case is getting actually diagnosed by a doctor. Next is having documentation that shows that you complained of a condition or of a symptom of a condition. Now, let's say that you don't have anything in your medical records. And oh, by the way, if you need to order your medical records, you can. That's with the SF-180, SF-180. You can order your records, thumb through them. I highly suggest it. See if you've missed anything over time. So now you don't have anything in your records, we'll say, regarding a condition that you know started during your time in service, but you were a good soldier, Marine, sailor, airman, whatever. So you didn't go get it documented or talk about it. You just sucked it up, ate Motrin, drank water, changed your socks. So now here you are today trying to file a VA claim with no in-service documentation or proof of your condition. So now what has to happen is you need to actually manufacture evidence to support a Nexus. How would that look? Well, if you have nothing in your record, right? Just nothing, zero. There's no mention of anything. Number one, you would write a statement yourself. That's on the 4138 form for the VA. And you would write in that statement about essentially two things. One, when you first started experiencing your condition, that you recognized it, but you didn't want to go get it documented for fear of any sort of, whatever your story is. For most of us, it's, look, I don't want to take anything away from my platoon, my company, whatever. If I go to the battalion aid station and they put me on some sort of bed rest or something, or just the fact I was gone for the day, I'm going to have to come back and do push-ups behind the building. No thanks. I'll just deal with it. So explain your situation on why you didn't get it diagnosed while you were in, why you didn't get it treated. Typically that's going to be, I took over-the-counter medication, I self-treated, I just dealt with it and moved forward. So you want to kind of explain that. And this is really, one, for the VA to understand, but two, if it needs to be pushed to a VA law judge at the BVA, Board of Veterans Appeals, you want the story to be able to be understood, right? This is why I didn't have anything during service. And it's not the first time that any of these people ever heard, look, I didn't want to deal with going because I knew that I was going to get repercussions, right? There would be repercussions if I went and was seen, especially if you're talking about, further back in time. I'm sure it's still like that today to some extent, but I know when I was in the Marine Corps in the early 90s, yeah, no, you're not going. You're just rubbing dirt on it and moving forward. And I know it was even worse before my time. So anyway, you're going to write your statement. You're going to see if you can find anybody who knew you while you were in, who could also attest to their knowledge of you experiencing whatever your condition is, right? Whether it's, I twisted my ankle and it was, my ankle's been bad ever since and it blew up like a softball and I had purple stripes and my toes were purple and I had two guys that shared a room with me and they saw, they saw what it looked like or whatever, right? Or they experienced me, eating handfuls of Tums for my GERD, or I was constantly taking Motrin for my migraines, whatever your situation is. Try to get buddy statements from people that you served with that could attest to their knowledge of you having that condition while you were in service. Now, one of the things that people don't, at least, I don't really watch a lot of other people's stuff, but I haven't really seen it ever, is working with your family and the reason why. Okay, if you can find buddies to double down on their knowledge of you having that condition while you were in service, that it manifested then. Now that's kind of that spot. That's the Nexus piece. But let's eliminate doubt that it occurred prior to your time in service, right? Because your condition had to have manifested during or as a result of your time in service, right? So they don't want you to have a condition prior. So how can you resolve any doubt? A family member, mother, father, brother, sister, whatever it is. Kids, if they're old enough and you were in long enough to be able to have them attest, but somebody who knows you, right? So mom, dad, brother, sister, came home on leave and the first thing they noticed was I brought a bottle of Tums in and I sat it down at the dinner table. And they had never experienced that before because I never had any issues like that before. Or I was limping or I complained about my ankle or whatever, right? So never had any issues. They would also write you statements that you never had any issues with that condition prior to their knowledge. They never noticed anything. And it wasn't until you came home on leave that one Christmas or summer or whatever it was. So they will attest to their knowledge of, one, knowing that you didn't have the condition and then experiencing you with the condition. So that helps. You'll take all that information, have that conversation with your doctor, have your doctor write you a Nexus letter explaining to the VA that your condition is ideally, more than likely, manifested during your time in service or as a result of your time in service because of XYZ, whatever rationale. If they are hesitant to say more than likely, then maybe just say, hey, look, can you do at least likely as not? Right? A coin flip, 50-50, that it's at least likely as not that my condition manifested during service or as a result of my service or whatever the case is. If you have an MOS or AFSC that has a higher likelihood of having certain conditions, give that information to your doctor because it's going to help them with the rationale for to support their Nexus letter, right? And they might decide to write it as more than likely. And it's just, why not? Why not say more than likely if you can get them to do that? It's going to just give you a little extra boost. So with regard to Nexus and Nexus letter, they're two separate things. The Nexus is what the VA needs to support your claim to show that your condition manifested during your time in service or as a result of your time in service. That's the Nexus. The Nexus letter helps you to support a Nexus, to provide a Nexus, right? So they're trying to establish a Nexus with the Nexus letter for you. So that's kind of some food for thought regarding Nexus letters, and how important it is to get that right. Because if you don't, you're going to end up appealing it, or disputing it through a higher level review or supplemental claim, and dragging out the whole process longer than it needs to be. So, in short, get it right the first time. Make sure that you have your Nexus dialed in, and whether it's with medical documentation during your time in service, ideal, right? 2, self-attesting forms, or just you complaining about certain signs or symptoms while you served, or you just having to try to manufacture as much as you can with buddy statements, your own statements from family members, and a Nexus letter from your doctor. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one, and remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.